Hello, welcome to today's video. I'm going to be going over one of the biggest online MTT hands I played in the last 12 months. This pot ends up being nearly 600 big blinds. I thought it was quite interesting. So for a start, it folds to this player here. They open to 3 big blinds. You can see that the whole table is relatively deep, but we're really, really deep. We're 290 big blinds effective, which is pretty rare in poker. This is going to operate more like a deep cash game hand, if anything. So he opens to 3 big blinds. I have ace queen suited here. This is a relatively standard free bet. You can mix this hand, you can call it sometimes, but I think people open too much and they call too much in early stages of a tournament. I'm in position with a strong hand. I just want to make the pot bigger with a good hand here, and ace queen suited is a very good hand. He can call with plenty of stuff that's worse. I could actually go a little bit bigger, so he went to 3 bigs and I made it 10 bigs. Because we're so deep, you want to make it a size where you're not starting to fold out too many hands you dominate, but you get as much value as you can. So my first way of looking at this spot is, okay, how is he going to respond with ace-jack offsuit? Well, he probably folds either way against a free bet out of position so deep. Well, maybe some players don't, but I would assume that they probably do. Same with king-queen offsuit. But then if we look at king-queen suited or ace-jack suited, ace-10 suited, ace-5 suited, all of these hands, I think they're going to call a little bit of a bigger size. So I think I can go bigger if I want to, but this size is completely fine. Just because we're so deep. So he's just not going to fold a pair here. He's not going to fold loads of hands that I'm way ahead of. I think just getting a little bit more value now is going to be good, but I can't speak about this too much. The flop is ace-jack 9 with 2 clubs and a heart. So we have top pair, pretty strong top pair, and a backdoor nut flush draw. My first thought on this board is, 1, is my hand strong enough to go broke? Almost certainly not, unless we get the perfect 2 heart run out without a board pair or the ace queen run out. It's pretty much impossible that I will get this many big blinds in and be happy. Already I'm thinking this hand is not amazing, so I think it does make sense to make some checks here, because if we think of the strongest hands on this board, I can have aces and he can't, but we can probably both have pocket jacks. He might not always 4-bet jacks here. We can probably both have pocket 9s, but he might have them a little bit more often because he's probably always going to raise call, but I'm not always going to 3-bet. I probably have more ace-jack offsuit. We probably have a similar amount of ace-9 suited. Maybe he's got a bit more, but I've got a slightly bigger nut advantage because I have pocket aces the most, and he should never have pocket aces here this deep when he just calls the 3-bet. I can bet with a lot of hands here, but there's a lot of hands that also make sense to check. Like if I have a weak ace, if I have a hand like pocket kings, if I have a hand like just a jack, a lot of these hands don't really want to bet and make the pot bigger because I'm almost just folding out all the worst hands. So I think in this spot, my initial thought is I want to check with some hands, bet with some hands. Which hands are good enough to bet 3 streets? Well, ace queen's probably the line where if it runs out perfectly, if it runs out, let's say 2, 6, no flush draw gets there, then it's already kind of dicey to get 3 streets. Ace 10 probably calls 3 streets, but if that's the only hand that's going to call 3 streets every time, then is this hand really good enough? Well, maybe. But obviously, if I bet the flop, that doesn't mean I have to bet the turn in the river. But if it ever comes heart-heart, I want to have the opportunity for the pot to be as big as possible too. So all these thoughts are sort of cycling in my head when I'm playing, and I think I concluded in game that if I have ace queen with the backdoor flush draw, I should always bet because my hand is so strong. It can also call a raise, whereas if I have ace queen here with no club and no heart, then like let's say I have ace queen of diamonds here, if I bet and my opponent raises, I'm already in a very tough spot and I just don't need to be in that spot. So checking the flop more often with a hand like that makes sense to me. So I think I want to bet most of the time with ace king, but same story, like ace king is not happy here versus a check raise, although it's a very strong hand. It has to call the check raise, but it's going to be blown off the hand if he's deciding to bluff too much very often, if I'm always betting ace king and always calling the flop and then folding to the turn bet or the river bet, whatever it is. In some ways I do want to defend my check range, but I also, when we're so deep and I'm in position, I always want to bet with my aces here because I just want to cooler him when he's got jacks or 9s. I want to make sure that we're playing a really big pot, and I think when you're in position it is more important to just drive the hand with your best hands. So if I am checking here, my range does need more protection because I don't want to check top set, and a hand like ace queen, ace king is probably one of the better ones because then I can always play call on any run out, and I'm not worried about being blown off with pocket kings or like a weak jack if he decides to go crazy. I think it makes sense to check ace queen sometimes. I don't want to do it with this ace queen. So he checks as he should do with his whole range, and I think we do have a choice of sizes here. I think small makes sense. I think big makes sense. Depends what portion of my range I want to put myself in, and with this hand I don't think it's worth a lot as a big bet because he's starting to feel the pressure already with a jack or with a weak ace if I bet too big. So I think betting small with this hand makes the most sense to me. Somewhere between, I was going to say, a quarter pot and up to like 40% pot. This size is a little bit small. Maybe I can go a little bit bigger because if I'm only going for 2 streets, then it's like compound interest. If I bet a third here and then I'm getting one more 80% pot bet, then it's just going to be that much bigger, and he's never going to fold an ace to 2 bets, I don't think. At least I can't imagine many players being capable. I think I can go a little bit bigger here, but it's not a big deal. and he goes for the call. The other nice thing about this bet size is I think most people out of position here, when they see the small bet size, if they do have 2-pair or the set or the really strong hand, they like to just bump up the pot now. Or if they have a strong draw, so like king, queen of clubs, king, 10 of clubs, 9x of clubs, queen, 10 of clubs, I think will raise much more often versus the small size because it's perceived as weaker. So that's something to think about as the hand goes forward. Now I get a really good turn card for my hand, but not the greatest turn card for my range, because if I have a hand like ace king here, well, there's just so many more hands that I lose to now, because he might turn 2-pair with 8-9 suited, he might turn the nut straight with queen 10, he might turn 2-pair with ace 8. So there's just a few more hands that my stronger hands aren't so happy against. I think similar story with the flop. I want to check with ace queen here sometimes, because if I bet with ace queen of diamonds here, let's say, I'm not happy to continue versus a raise, because it's just not, it doesn't feel great. If I do bet with a hand like ace queen, no backdoor on the flop, and I get to this turn card, then I think I should check with ace queen quite a lot and just try and not let the pot get too big, because I don't want to be exploited by him being able to check raise me, and I don't think my hand is worth a lot if I don't have the flush draw here. So if I bet the turn for 60% with ace queen, I think his ace 2 to ace 6 will get to fold quite a lot, which is really not good for my hand. It does still call with loads of pairs and straight draws, loads of flush draws, etc. I think a bet makes sense too, but it's just that I'm giving him the opportunity to raise and make me fold with a hand which is quite good and has a lot of equity against his range. Again, I think it's just a mix. Ace king, I would be mixing check here a lot as well. So once I've decided this hand is strong enough to call a check raise and can be called by a lot of worse hands, I think that makes sense to bet, and then that should also be indicative of my bet size. I think that a lot of people will just decide that they either want to bet big or check in this spot, but with my exact hand, I think it makes the most sense to bet not so big, because I don't want him to fold a hand like queen jack. I don't want him to fold a hand like ace 6, because I just have these hands completely dominated. And I don't mind betting small because I can take the heat of a check raise. So normally you don't want to bet small if you're always folding to the raise, because a lot of people will take a small bet as a reason that you're weak and they'll attack it more often. It's really nice to have some small bets which can take the heat. And I think if I have like a set of aces or queen 10 or some of the really strong hands, they don't really want to bet small here. They just want to blast it and hope to be against the really strong hands. It would make sense to bet small sometimes with straights and sets and stuff too, but I think this is also a really nice one to go for a smaller bet size on the turn. And I could be wrong there in solver world. Like I haven't ran this exact spot, especially for this deep. It's hard to find solves when you're 300 big blinds deep, but my intuition here says this hand is strong enough to bet. It would make sense to check sometimes. I think in general, because it's such a high value hand, that I do want to make the pot bigger. I don't want to go too crazy though, because then he's folding the hands that dominate. I think I went for a small bet size here. Yeah, so I go for the third bet. But he's going to continue with jack 10, 9, 10, any club flush draw, any heart flush draw. He's going to continue here with all of the worst ace X as well. So I think this bet size achieves a lot. If I improve to a queen, it's pretty dicey. If I improve to the ace, I think I can value bet. If I improve to the nut flush, obviously I can value bet. It's also nicer that the pot is going to be bigger the times that I river the nut flush, because that's just a high value spot for me. And now he goes for the big check raise. This is kind of what I talked about with the small bet size. It can induce a raise. That's not, he might just always have the nuts when he does this for some players, but for a lot of players, when he didn't check raise the flop when I went really small, and now he raises this turn. And I think with the bet size he's chosen, it doesn't really make sense to have a thin value raise. It's very credible that I still have a hand like I have. So I don't think it makes sense for him to raise with a hand that's worse for value. But I don't think it also makes sense for him to raise with a hand like even 9-8, because he's out of position. He's making the pot bigger when we're really deep. It's really hard to get called on the river by worse with a hand like 9-8 if he bets. And there's so many really awkward rivers. So if the rivers are 10, a queen, a 7, a club, a heart, all of these rivers are really, you're really hating life with 2-pair there. I would extrapolate that to also say ace 8's in a similar spot. Ace 8 is probably strong enough to raise here, but is everyone going to do it? No. Are a lot of people just going to call and then never fold the river because it's just the easier play? When he did take this raise in game, obviously it's still plausible that I have aces and queen 10 sometimes. My head was telling me he's representing queen 10 or 10-7 suited. 10-7 suited, I'd pretty much rule out pre-flop because he raised called the free bet. So he's telling me that he has queen 10 suited. There's only 3 combos of queen 10 suited left, and queen 10 of clubs will probably raise the flop a lot. So I would give him all queen 10 of diamonds, all queen 10 of spades, and then probably half a combo of queen 10 of clubs. So that's only 2.5 combos of hands that I lose to. But obviously it's very easy that I'm never folding this turn already because I have the nut flush draw and I just have the equity no matter what he's got. I don't have to think about this decision yet, but I'm already thinking of the river. He's only really repping, at least in my head, a flop trap, which is rare versus my flop size. Maybe ace 8, but it's already a little bit thin. Or the queen 10, which his queen 10 of clubs that didn't raise the flop, or the queen 10 of diamonds or spades, which is pretty credible for him to have those hands, queen 10 of spades, queen 10 of diamonds. But I chose a small size, and I think a lot of people are induced to bluff when you choose the small size, and he doesn't need to be bluffing very often for me to have an absolute print call if I think he's only repping such a thin range. So that's what my head was telling me going to the river. I haven't got a decision yet, it's just an easy call, but obviously I'm already thinking, do I want to ever call the river? So I call. And the river's a complete brick. I wasn't sure whether I should bluff catch the river depending on his bet size. If he chose a small size here, it would make sense that he could have ace-8 or 9-8 because they need to get called by worse, and it makes sense to give me the better price so I can call with a hand like the one I've got. Whereas if he chose a really big size, to be more continuing that story that he just has queen 10. So he goes for the overbet jam, which is more than 2 times pot. And now my head tells me straight away, he is only representing queen 10 because I can easily have aces here. I know I spoke about the fact I would mainly barrel the turn, but it's very plausible that I would choose a small size with aces with the ace of hearts sometimes and then always get here. He doesn't want to choose this massive size with a hand that can't beat aces. At least that's what I thought in game. Maybe I would be owned sometimes with if I make a hero call here and he has a hand worse than aces, but my head was telling me that that just wasn't the case, and he's only representing the queen 10 suited. And like I said, there's only 2.5 combos of queen 10 suited that are left. I only need to be right just over 40% of the time, meaning it's actually true that if he only has 2 combos of bluffs and I'm correct about his value range, then I'm already making a profitable call. So the way we can use combos to work out our pot odds here is if I think he's only got 2.5 combos of bluffs, which we can debate about, but that's what I thought in game. Let's say he has 2 combinations of bluffs here, and I mean 2 exact combos. So let's say 9-10 of spades, 9-10 of diamonds. That's 2 combos. Well then it's 2 divided by 4.5, because that's his ratio of bluffs, because there's 2.5 value and 2 bluffs. So 4.5 total hands he takes the line with if he only has 2 bluffs. And then that means I'm right, I'm going to win 44.44% of the time if this is true. And based on my pot odds, I only need to be right 40.5% of the time. I actually only need him to have 2 bluff combos for this to be a profitable call. And for a lot of people, this massive overbet and this turn raise will just purely be queen 10 suited and this will still be a fold. But the extra info I had in game was that he acted really quickly on the river. He snap jammed. Like if I put myself in his shoes, having queen 10 suited there, the timings he took didn't line up. And because his value range is so refined here, I think these things can end up meaning quite a lot because I can then dilute his queen 10 suited even more and increase his bluffing frequency because his timings are so out of sync here and his bet sizing is so kind of crazy. Like to snap jam 2 times pot for over 200 big blinds here is pretty mental. Like I think with queen 10 suited, and again I might be wrong here, people like to at least feign a decision, because if you were going to make a massive bluff here, you wouldn't know to do it necessarily straight away. So there's so many hands which do want to continue the turn, and if he ever decides to bluff, then there's so many hands he can choose from. I decided to keep him honest this time, just more based on the timings and like I said, the pot odds, because I think he's only representing queen 10 suited, and it's really hard to represent such a finite range of hands. So I made the call this time. He decided to lose his mind with pocket fives. That was 584 big blind pot. I got to win with 1 pair. But because I was very tuned in this hand in game, I think I made the right decision, and it won me one of the biggest pots I've ever won in an online multiple table tournament. It's very easy to just be playing lots of tables and not think through these decisions so much. I know on a different day I would have been playing too many tables and I would have potentially snap folded the river versus his bet size or not noticed the timing tell. It's just these little clues that go into each hand, and there's so much information that's always there for you to utilize, and little bits of information can go a long way when you have a decision like a bluff catch, because my decision on this river here, I need to be right 40.5% of the time. I'm going to gain so much EV just by noticing these little things about people's bet size and about how long people take to make their decision. And obviously I can use the information wrong, I'm a fallible human, but when I've played so many hands online and I've seen so many different patterns of timing, I've played millions of hands at this point, it just becomes quite intuitive. It becomes part of your unconscious competence that when I see certain bet sizes, when I see certain timing tells that people have, it is a huge red flag in my head, because I've experienced it so many times in the past now, where it's a spot where someone always has it, or it's a spot when someone never has it. And the more you play, the more that you will refine your intuition on these spots. And that's why my main advice to people that do want to get better at poker is just play a lot. Even if it's a stake that isn't going to make you a living at poker, just play as many hands as possible. set yourself the goal to play 10,000 hands a week, even if it's low stakes cash, even if it's spin and goes. The more hands you play, the more you develop your intuition, and it goes a long way, because once you've got it in your unconscious competence and you're not thinking about it, it's just there. It's just going to make you infinitely better at this game. The more you play, the more situations you're in. I hope that was a useful video. I happened to get it right this time, and given the hand that he showed up with, it's clear that he is massively over bluffing this spot. He's actually bluffing with, he actually called the flop with a hand he shouldn't call with, and then always bluffed it, which means his bluff frequency in this line is probably 100%. Next time I'll go over a big hand that I lose, so I don't look like a hero that makes the right decision. I get these decisions wrong all the time as well. I hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching this video. Let me know if you like this style of video. I can do more hand analysis like this. I can do like the biggest hand I've played of the week. I can do specific spots that people want to look at, etc. So just let me know. And thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.